Welcome to another VC Wisdom Pod. We have Govind Mundhra with us today, aka G-Man. He's the founding partner at Paradigm Shift Capital. He's an early stage VC investor. He's the former CFO of WeWork India. And yeah, he's a badminton enthusiast. So Top Leads GTM is presenting this podcast. If you'd like help with your cold outreach, get a bunch of meetings on a daily basis, topleads.agency is the place to go to. G-Man, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks for having me here. Excited to be part of this conversation. A lot of things going on. I mean, world of venture capital is never boring, so to say. It's always exciting, always good to know what founders are building. So yeah, I mean, just sort of understanding what's happening in the startup landscape, both in India and United States. So we are one of those very niche VCs from this side of the world who are looking at backing founders who are building for global markets. Right? It's fundamentally a thesis that was drawn out uh, back about 5 years back when most of the work that was happening in the Indian startup landscape or the Indian VC ecosystem was more focused on consumer. A lot less was happening on deep tech or B2B. Uh, just with the sort of experience that we had from our own operating days, sort of having built three unicorns between the three partners, fundamentally we realized that there is a large gap within the landscape where founders who are aspirational to build global startups from India, there's a very less sort of participation or percentage share that we have, and just purely because of our own experiences of having built InMobi, which was a tech product company from India built for a global market from day zero. WeWork is always a global brand. We have worked with Segment. So like bunch of startups that we have operated at have been, uh, I would say, have gone on to build them from early days to where they are today. Uh, Thought a lot of those learnings would come handy for the founders who are looking to build from India for United States or the global market. And therefore, that is where we are 5 years into our journey. We have invested in more than 25 startups, all early stage. This is the stage that we believe operators or founders would sort of align very well. A lot of help that is required from venture capital is just not restricted to capital. It goes way beyond capital, and just from our own experiences of building that, we thought that is something that founders would look forward to, and that is what we have been able to establish in the past 5 years.
Got it. Let's start with your CFO background at WeWork. How did you get there, and how was that crazy train for you?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, by profession, by qualification, I'm a chartered accountant. A chartered accountant is almost like a CPA equivalent in the US. It's a very small population of the country that actually goes on to qualify this. So hard days, hard training days from my childhood, and then got on to the finance lanes. I actually worked with a bunch of Fortune 500 companies, IBM and Dell, a name to few. But soon enough, I think I switched gears. One of the best decisions that I think I took probably was not so smart enough at that point in time. It was very early days for the country into the startup landscape. For someone to actually be part of Fortune 500 setup, to actually join startup bandwagon, was unheard of, very limited. And this is, I'm talking about 12 to 13 years back, right? So it's been more than a decade when Indian startup ecosystem practically had no unicorn to about having 100 unicorns now. So we have seen that journey. So I landed on to being a finance director at InMobi. InMobi was India's first unicorn, SoftBank's first investment in the country. So a lot of understanding in terms of what's really being built at early stages from there on. I spent about 5 years building businesses across US and China primarily, worked with VCs out there, and post that I got an offer with WeWork for being their CFO in the country. The time I joined WeWork, I think we had one unit in the country running. It's currently about 55 units, running massively well, growing exponentially, profitably, and they are looking or they are planning for an IPO listing soon as well. So yeah, I mean that's been the background to getting to being the CFO at WeWork. But soon enough, I think what we realized was all of this culminates to doing something much bigger. That is when Paradigm Shift Capital came into being. Uh, as I said earlier, the landscape at that point in time, there was a clear. We are probably we pride ourselves to call as a GP thesis fit fund. And the reason for that is all of us have just built global brands, and that's something that was lacking earlier, back in the day, and that's the gap that we are filling right now.
Right. And what did WeWork India had to do with the WeWork that was building itself in the US? I think Adam was famous for inventing like weird metrics like rent per whatever and adding that to his balance sheet and sort of making think that the business was growing and so forth. Have you been part of that craziness, or India WeWork was a standalone branch? Because it seems that it's still growing nowadays.
Yeah, so WeWork in India is actually a joint venture agreement between WeWork in US and one of the largest real estate developer here in southern India, Embassy Developers. So they Embassy actually owns and manages the entire operations for WeWork in India. Obviously, there is a franchisee agreement or a brand agreement that is there alongside with WeWork in US. I think in the initial days before sort of how the WeWork global landscape panned out to be, we all used to work very very closely with global WeWork team in terms of just sort of building the brand early on, getting the right people on board, etc. But once we had fundamentally built processes around the best standards of what really a WeWork uh, workspace should look like, from there on, I think the local management team or the local leadership team took over in terms of how you really want to build the fundamental tenets of building businesses. So we used to have our own decision making framework as much as we used to always leverage upon what is the best processes that are available globally. But in terms of decision making, in terms of selection of real estate, in terms of designing them, in terms of sort of financing them, all of those decisions used to lie locally, which is with WeWork India. I think we just went on to do right things much better, I would say. Uh, I am a huge believer of doing basic things right. I think a lot of times in terms of doing something outlandish, something very, very, crazy, you tend to forget, uh, as a founder, as a founding team, you tend to sort of miss out on few specific basic things. I think fortunately enough for us at WeWork India, the entire leadership team was supremely aligned in terms of how do we want to build this. Obviously it has to be supremely sustainable. That was part of the entire mandate that sort of I brought onto the board, and therefore I think we have been able to build a brand that is going to last for a long time. And as you rightly said, it's doing very very well. It's growing more than 60% year on year growth, uh, profitable. Unit economics looks very very good. Member NPS looks very very good. People have been there for a very long time, so the talent piece is also coming together. So yeah, all in all, very good experience, and proud to be have been part of that journey.
And how did you get into VC? Why do you think this is like your next thing? Why not start a common business?
Yeah, I mean, see, the path always was very clear to build something of my own. And as I went through my own experiences of being on the other side of the table at all points in time, whether it was at InMobi, whether it was at WeWork, whether it was actually helping a lot of founder friends who are now, have built multiple unicorns. One thing which became very, very clear across the whole pathway was the country lacked operator VCs, to be honest, right? And that's something that was very clear to me that someone has to fill this gap. B, I think fundamentally, and I have spoken about this at various forums, that I always love building businesses the way they should be built, right? Obviously, there is a certain venture style to it, and that we understand very, very clearly. But a very few few of I would rather say at that point in time the system ecosystem wasn't mature enough to look into deep tech landscape, to look into deeper AI ML investments, something that would be a longer period of gestation to bring results. Those are the things that we were interested in. Back in the day I had also worked with services company, tech services company, which were building for global markets. So India has been extremely good in terms of building services layer. I think the tech product layer is something that we saw firsthand at InMobi, supremely inspired by that. And I thought, if we can do this for three unicorns, we can probably build unicorns on our own. That is how the whole VC journey started. It started from a mere thought process of actually co-building alongside with a bunch of founders that we will also invest capital in. The idea was just not to sort of act like an investor where you invest money for about 4 to 5 years of time. You sort of don't even look at what's happening at those companies and then start looking at how do you build returns. The idea was how do you actually start co-building along with each of the founders that we invest in, and being very very clear that fundamentally we are looking at brands, products which are more catering towards the global audience than just the local audience, something that was completely missing. So we saw this gap, and I think as a founder, you always have that founder hat on once you're building products, once you're building companies. And therefore, for us, it became very, very clear that this is one gap that we would want to fulfill. We would want to go and do this, and that has been that was the founding stepping stone to getting into the VC landscape. It was no easy just to get started at that point in time. But if there is anything that we have proven right in the past 4 to 5 years of our operations, it's been one clear that founders love working with us, and that's something that we take a lot of pride in.
So what's the average check size? Is it like 100K per company? Do you go higher? And what kind of returns are you expecting after 5, 10 years?
So we invest only at pre-seed and seed stages, super early stage. And as I said, we are fascinated to build alongside with the founders. So you come in early and you sort of start building it. Fortunately enough, in my own journey, I have experienced all three stages of building startup from 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100. So understand different stages of building startups to scale ups, and then obviously, fortunately enough, they can also go on to listing in any market that they wish to. So from those experiences is what we realized is coming in early is something that we would feel more happy with contributing in terms of the development of the product, development of the team, development of the markets that they want to sort of get into. So we come in early, and at earlier stages, our check sizes starts from anywhere between $250,000 to $500,000. We go on to invest in any startup portfolio up to $1.5 million as well.
Interesting. And when are you expecting your first exit? Because you started like 5 years ago. When's the next exit gonna be? How big is it gonna be? What top portfolio company do you have right now?
So, I mean, the good thing for us has been that across the companies that we have invested in, a lot of them are into deep tech. And once you are in deep tech, it works fundamentally very, very different from any consumer setup or any other SaaS setup, for example, right? Deep tech would always require you to invest a lot of time for the product refinement, for the innovation that you're working on, for making sure that you are patenting the product. That is a very very long drawn process compared to any other sort of sector or themed investment that you may have. So for us it was very very clear that it is going to be a slightly longer patient time. Had we would have done some other sectors, probably it could have been slightly more earlier. So yes, 5 years thus far, the way we look into it is enormous success for many of our portfolio companies when they have gone on to build $50 million of order book or $50 million of ARR. So a lot of those have already qualified. They have graduated to Series A, Series B. That's something that you as a fund, VC fund, continue to sort of monitor on. But I think more importantly, the love from the customer is what keeps us on our toes. Whenever a founder shares with us the kind of impact that the product is building, is something that is something very very fascinating for you to hear, because fundamentally when we invested in the company, it was day zero. You tend to invest more in the founder than in the product at those days. Pre-seed is all about that you need to sort of back those people. And very proud that we have been able to back some really really impactful companies who have gone on to create a small dent in the sector that they are working in. So still looking ahead in terms of exit, we are not looking at exit in anytime soon. From at least from the deep tech portfolio, very very clearly these guys are doing very very well. There have been bunch of conversations where some of these startups have gotten M&A offers, so we could have gotten an exit, but founders are really looking to build for long term. That's something that we are very very aligned on, and therefore we would continue to back them as they progress much further.
And what do you feel that India has that other countries don't in terms of startup? Startup power? Is it grit? Is it the infrastructure that's developing? Is it the fact that there's a bunch of top CEOs nowadays that are of Indian nationality, and that's inspiring? What does it have that other countries don't?
So you're looking for what the advantages that the country is sitting on right now?
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I think fundamentally, see, it's one of the largest populous country, right? So the amount of users or the amount of information insight that you can get from just looking at launching your product is phenomenal. But for us, the way we look at it is just not being limited to what you can build for the country. I think what we look at as our investing thesis and some the work that we have done in the past is how do you build from India for the global market. By virtue of that, there you already are aware of the hardships that you go through when you are actually building a startup in the country, but you also gain the fruits of a very large market in either in United States or parts of Europe where the product may be relevant, right? So it's not necessarily our theme or our thematic investment is not necessarily restricted just to the country investment. Yes, you can start from here, you can build your operational blocks from here, but at all points in time, we want you to be targeting or aspirationally looking at global. I think outside of the fund, if you were to ask me, very very exciting times in terms of if you were to build it for the country. What we are looking at from 15 years back to now has been deep internet penetration, humongous digitization of every process that can be there. So from onboarding a user to actually being able to bring a quality customer experience for them has been very very clear. Deep e-commerce penetration that is happening within tier 2 tier 3. It's just not limited to Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, but it's happening way deeper down in tier 2 tier 3 towns, which was not the case. So all of that, I think, obviously is propelled by the entire ecosystem coming together, but startups played a significant role in terms of sort of, I think, speeding this up to where it is today. And going forward, I think this we have heard already a lot of times, this decade belongs to India, this century belongs to India, a bunch of those things. But I think more importantly, what I see now is the quality of entrepreneurs that are coming up, which probably was missing a decade back. The kind of problems that really the founders are willing to solve for, whether impactful, whether clearly for driving business. Uh, it's very focused. There is a significant amount of hunger. There's a clear thought process on how to go about it. And I think the overall infrastructure that has happened on digitization is aiding much more to that.
Got it. And you said that you're racket sports practitioner. You love music as well. You're a hustler. You learn every day. What does a day in your life look like?
The day in life doesn't look like what I plan it to be to start with. I think it's unpredictable, and I've always loved it to be that way. Don't want it to be sort of very monotonous, robotic. So that's not something that I am looking forward to. So for me, it is more about being agile, being flexible, being available for our portfolio founders, being available on a call for IPO stage founder to sort of understand what they are going through and understand where we can help. I mean, a large part of the day obviously is spent in terms of just building blocks on these. But we also are very, very research driven VCs. It's something that I don't hear very often from the fraternity. We spend a lot of time just looking at what are the outliers, what are the some of the technologies that are going to come up in future. I probably can quote you here is when we were talking about AI, this was back in 2016. Like we started talking about AI back in the day. It's obviously right now the buzzword. A lot of people are building on that. A lot of utility layers have been built on that. So great kudos that it took that time, but it has come to a point where this is happening. But for us, even when I was pitching to my investors 5 years back, this was one of the thematic themes that we had presented to them, that this is something that we believe is going to come up, and these are the areas of investment pockets that we are going to heavily invest in. So just being sort of focused on a bit of research work. We have spent a lot of time with big tech companies in the Bay Area, trying and understanding from them in terms of what their next layer of innovation looks like, what are the things that they are working on, etc. Just keeps us very, very clear on how things are headed. We blend that with our own intellect, our own thesis, our own research, and therefore be able to take a product back to our investors in terms of for them to look forward to.
Right. What's next for you? What are your top goals for this year?
Top goals for this year is continue to find very, very interesting AI companies. I think the reason I say this is the AI landscape in itself has changed significantly in the past few years. It's no more about just building initial blockages or the fundamental models. I think there is a lot of value deep down within the application layer, within the infra layer, and extracting a lot of gold mines is something that we keep looking forward to. If you look at current YC batch, I think 80% of the deal flow was all AI and very interesting workflows. It's just not repetition of what we have heard in past 1 or 2 years. A lot of quality value add work. The entire, I would say, the investing landscape has changed on AI from a time when you would actually look at 100K ARR being a benchmark for looking at pre-seed, looking at initial traction, users, etc. That whole aspect has changed because today you really don't need to hire about 20-25 watt people to get to your first version of the product. You can build a lot of frameworks on your own, leverage AI to its fullest extent, test it out with your initial ICP, ideal customer profile, see whether it's working or not, and then really zoom to 10 million ARR. The game has completely changed in the West, right? Something like this we expect will happen sooner or later in this side of the country as well. But because we invest in US assets directly, for us keeping a tab on that, keeping our sort of eyes out very clearly, keenly on what's being built becomes a benchmark of the work that we want to do. And that's been something that has been very, very inspiring throughout 2025. You heard Sam talking about what Meta is going up to for building their own AI practice. We are going to see a lot of that pretty soon happening all across the globe.
Well, G-Man, thanks for coming on today. Govind, tell us a bit more where we can find out more about you and your company.
So I say that again. I missed you.
Yeah, where can we find out more information about you?
Right. Oh, so we have our webpage. I mean, the webpage is pretty open. The entire portfolio is listed out there. So please do visit paradigmshift.vc. There's a bunch of very, very interesting work that is happening across the portfolio. All three of us, the partners, are pretty active on LinkedIn as well. So if any of you wish to reach out on for having a chat, always available, always a DM, looking after that.
So I was Charles and Govind for another